All right, officially broadcasting on Google Hangout on Air. Uh, so this is the third roundtable discussion that we're having. Although we do have I think most of us are new faces to this type of format. So the agenda, again, is linked on the side on the event page too. I'm pretty sure all of us are on it. But basically, here's like the protocol for like what we're going to go through. So we're going to start off with introductions. And then we all kind of have a primer on what the topic is, which is like Filipino cultural dance and like Filipino American communities. And since we're all from the Midwest, we're definitely going to be talking mostly about our community. And then there's also a video that I'll share on my screen so then we can all watch at the same time to kind of get the ball rolling on discussion questions and things like that. So I can start with introductions. For those of you who aren't as familiar with me, I'm Kathleen from the University of Michigan. I'm a senior here. I served 2 years on e-board, but right now I'm serving as secretary of MAFA. And I guess that's my main affiliated organization right now. Kenny, you go next.
Hello, I'm Kenny Stamper. I'm from the University of Michigan, FASA. I'm also the vice president external for MAFA. And I've been on FASA board as well the past 2 years as external chair and currently as treasurer.
I think JP, you're next to my lineup.
Okay. Hi, I'm JP Levenko from UIUC. I am currently one of our FCN co-coordinators, and I also serve as an intern for the exec board and also an intern for the exec board for UIUC's Asian Pacific American Coalition, which is an organization focusing more on social and cultural awareness.
Christine, did you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Christine, Christine Joy Antonio. I graduated from UIUC in 2014. I served as co-cultural 2011 to 12, vice president internal, and I was involved on the fact committee, and I was also on MAFA e-board. I was co-outreach in 2012 to 13, and competed in battle for all 4 years of undergrad.
Christian.
You're muted.
Sorry, hold on. I had some trouble unmuting my microphone since on my phone. But hi, my name is Christian Panetta. I am on the FASA e-board this year as co-cultural chair and an intern for Kathleen as MAFA secretary. But yeah, I've been in these talks the past 2 times, and I look forward to discussing cultural performance with y'all.
Go ahead, Bryce.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Bryce Mayor from the University of Minnesota. I serve as PSA Minnesota's president, and I am a senior at the University of Minnesota, so I'll be graduating this spring. For me, this is actually going to be a really interesting discussion because I feel like I'm kind of an outsider when it comes to traditional dance and other things, because I've actually never done Battle of the Bamboo. And so I have a couple of different perspectives about my own experiences with traditional dance or things like that too. So I'm happy to share and discuss with everybody here.
Nice. All right. So I will, in case you guys don't want to watch it from my shared screen, I'll link the link to the YouTube video on the side chat. Just a primer on what this is from in case if this is your first time joining this call. So ABS-CBN had this TV show series back in like the mid 2000s based in San Francisco, and they had these panels of like Filipinos and Filipino Americans talk about like all these different types of issues, and the one that we're going to watch is about Filipino Cultural Nights, and it's only about 4 minutes long, so it won't take as long as other videos that are on here, but I thought it'd be a really good launch point for all of us to kind of collectively have the same starting point before we like delve into the other discussion questions. So let's see, I'll share a screen here. All right.
One of the most well-known culture nights, especially in the collegiate level, is the Filipino Culture Night.
So like when I first saw PCN in high school, I thought it was such a revolutionary event up until I started realizing that, wow, it's the same thing every year.
We also included hip hop.
To me, it looked like a Gap commercial. But there's also a question of cost.
Well, from our end, we usually spend about $15,000 for an entire weekend.
You guys do it like all the time, whereas PCN is just a one-time thing. It's like, you know, it's pretty much a waste of money, I think, to like pretty much spend $30,000.
It wouldn't be a waste of money if there was some kind of continuation. I think every year you have a different coordinator.
A lot of the funding comes from school funds, student fees. So it's kind of expected that you outreach the entire campus community. So you're not only outreaching the Filipino community. I would have to disagree that it's really one, just for your friends and family, and two, that the money is coming from like an extraneous, like mysterious source.
Every year it's that same lolo with the same jokes. Aren't we reinforcing these stereotypes?
I think the nice thing about being Filipino and Filipino American is to accept the fact that we could laugh at ourselves as well and have those. It's not really stereotype, but as well of enjoying being Filipino, that it's okay to be Filipino.
We're not even dealing with real issues anymore. Sometimes it's always identity. I'm not saying all of them. Not all of them do that, but we tend to concentrate. It's 4 hours long. How long does it take us to really discover who we are? Right. And yes, we're focusing on identity, but we've only been here in America for like 40, 50 years. It's going to take a long time to figure out who we are. So it's priceless.
PCN really necessarily only covers those issues. I think over time it's kind of specified or has divided into specific issues, like to cover gender and sexuality, to cover how Filipinos are involved in hate crimes.
But at the same time, are they only covering that during PCN? Is it happening throughout the year? Because, you know, do we have to wait for PCN to cover the issue?
I mean, who are all these college students to tell me that I'm not being Filipino enough? I bet half of them can't even speak Tagalog, and they've never even been to the Philippines.
What happened here is we have PCN actually dividing Filipinos instead of uniting them.
People who can't afford to like spend so many hours in PCN, people who need to work, will not be able to do PCN.
So you have to pay to participate.
Yeah,
in PCN.
exactly.
That's
in Berkeley.
hefty. Doesn't that divide it in class?
Nice to meet you. Can I call you?
What if you feel like you don't have any talent?
There's a lot of things that the people could participate in. And the neat thing is, if it's really divisive, why is it then at USF, where we started 23 students, now there's over 300 students involved with this?
PCN can totally like inspire so many people. I really want to see a PCN, you know, where like I'm blown away by like a few hours of the show and come back home and really like read up and research on like what the topics were. I really want to see a quality show with really good actors, good dancing, and just like to see like a really good community event.
Right.
Might cost you more money though.
PCN will and always be a stepping stone for our future artists in our community, and I think everybody has somehow been inspired.
PCNs are there to invoke thought and to invoke further education and improve who we are, not only as an individual, but as a community. Be heard, stand up, and speak out! All right. Thoughts? Anyone have any reactions to that? I feel like, Bryce, you have something to say?
I need to calm down first. Just
Okay. All right, Christian, do you want to share? you're next in line on my screen.
I guess for me, all those videos like the speak out to just make me like shook to the core because just like it invoke a lot of like feelings because there's so many like strong opinions about like what we do as Filipino Americans. But like one thing when I first saw this video that stuck out to me was like this focus on like identity, in that one person was kind of like frustrated that PCNs always focus on this idea of identity. But if this series is based on like the West Coast, right? So I think it's sort of unfair to like generalize like what PCN should focus on. Like maybe in the West Coast, like they could like move forward for that. But I think in the Midwest, especially when a lot of Filipino Americans don't grow up with like resources to find out like what exactly Filipino culture is, I think it's very important to have this focus on identity still. And even like, but some people are like able to move forward. I think still a majority of Filipino Americans still are trying to make sense of like what it means to be Filipino American.
Bryce, are you all collected now?
I'm all good. I'm super pumped about this topic, especially because as president of this year, I have the opportunity to project a vision towards our PCN for this year. It's a really big opportunity. I'm really honored. Going off of what Christian said, that focus on identity just really shook me to the core, especially because here in Minnesota, at least, we actually have a lot of, most of PSA Minnesota's demographics in terms of membership is non-Filipinos. I think I mentioned this in the last roundtable discussion. And that's really important because we want our community to understand what it means to be Filipino. So like somebody mentioned in the video, not all of us have that sort of privilege to just automatically know what's going on. People want to dig deeper. For those who already understand it, want to dig deeper, but we can't necessarily do that until we actually touch like the very surface and then kind of work our way down. I think there are many different ways to approach deeper themes but still actually connect like an outside community. For example, the past couple of years, we've been focusing on themes that have been more than just identity. So what part of identity are we looking at? In 2015, we looked at an identity within what we call rise of Filipino American culture. We looked at different points in history where we had this conflict and we rose out of that conflict, whether it was the establishing ourselves as real people underneath the Spanish colonization, establishing ourselves as like an independent nation after World War II, establishing ourselves again after the end of Ferdinand Marcos's term. Those are types of the challenges that we did. Last year, we focused on idea of how do we celebrate. That's the identity that we focused on. And this year, shameless plug, but this year, we're focusing on the identity of shining. The idea of shine. What does it mean for Filipinos and Filipino Americans to shine? So I can understand where the lady was coming from when she said, "I'm so bothered that it's," or the guy was saying, "I'm always so bothered that it's just about identity." But our history is only, to put it simply, we are only 100 years old in terms of having our own identity. That's not underneath somebody else. So we are still very young. We're still infants compared to all these other civilizations, Chinese, Korean, European. We don't have that sort of long track saying we can go through something else because we're still trying to figure ourselves out, not just as Filipino Americans, not just as Filipinos, but the Philippine X identity too. So that's why I'm really super passionate about it, because it is so relevant now.
Hi. Going off the identity piece, I mean, I think I agree that a lot of PCNs do focus on that identity conflict piece, especially going through undergrad when you're making all these huge decisions in your life and being faced with all these new communities and new challenges, and everyone goes through that process at some point, but everyone's at a different point in that process. no one's ever going to be at the same point in their lives. But hold on. So the term intersectionality, I don't know if you guys have like read up on that or heard it, but like you can't just focus on one piece of your identity in isolation. We can't just focus on being, you know, Filipino, Filipino American. There's so many other parts of our identity that interact with being Filipino American. Like, what is it like to be Filipino American as someone who's multicultural or mestizo, or someone who's Filipino American and also transgender. Like, all of those different parts of your identity interact, and it's important to address that, even though that might seem repetitive to some people. I think the people that do identify with that other identity do appreciate that representation, and that appreciate that being focused on in those PCNs, if that is a part of their theme or whatever.
JP or Kenny, did you have anything?
Yeah, I'll go now. So the video, like, I definitely brought up a lot of like questions and like things I've like thought of to myself. Like, I definitely get like the isn't it the same thing every year, or like a very similar thing every year, kind of like argument. But and it's just, there's a lot of topics, or these are like topics that I like think about a lot, especially when we all put so much work in every year to make these events happen. So to me, like, the fact that we every year we put in all this work and we perform the dances, we plan these events, the fact that we do this every year kind of, and it continues, kind of like implies that it's worth it in general. Even, you know, it's worth, people keep coming, we still put it on. So like it's clearly worth it. It's clearly like accomplishing something every year. And I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I definitely think I'm not, it's not my place to say like what we're accomplishing really, because I still gotta figure that out for myself too. But like, I don't know, I think and yeah, I agree with what I think Christian said about how, since like they're on the West Coast, it's like PCN's kind of entirely different there than like most of the Midwest like PCN. So it's hard to compare them that way. And like they have a long history on like, especially like San Francisco area, of like Filipinos and in Filipino like identity. So it's like, I don't know, they're just more well established. And I think for us in the Midwest, it's a really entirely different like playing field. And so I think like, as far as like establishing our identity, like that's something we're doing all the time and we're still trying to do. But yeah.
Hi. So one of the things that struck me in the video is that, like the name wasn't given, but the woman who was like, we've been like discussing this idea of the Filipino identity like for hours and hours and hours, and like it's like so drawn out. That's very assumptive. I feel like a lot of us, especially like freshmen, who are the ones who are the biggest demographic participating in these events, at least for UIUC, they like haven't, a lot of us haven't been thinking about this at all. Like for me personally, I didn't have contact with like a real like large familial Filipino community until I got here to U of I. So like to say that, oh, we've been exploring our Filipino identity for so long, like when are we gonna stop and just accept like who we know we are? Like that's, yeah, I don't like that. I think part of what FCN accomplishes is just like having that outlet for self-expression, especially for those who aren't used to that, and like having that way to sort of like foot in the door for like, oh, what is my identity? And just like in general getting more comfortable in your own skin is a lot of what FCNs, PCNs are about for me. And just like building that community and being comfortable in a space where you can see that there are people like you and also people who are unlike you that are celebrating what you've accomplished.
All right, so I guess transitioning this more specifically into cultural Filipino dance. The reason why I chose this video specifically to kind of get this conversation started on cultural Filipino dance is because I feel like at PCNs, that's usually like the main attraction. Like I mean, like FASA will have like singing performances, musical acts, maybe some games, but the main part that like we focus on are like the dance performances, like the traditional Filipino dances that are done. And I feel like for all the PCNs, at least in the Midwest, there's some form of cultural Filipino dance present. And then, I mean, we just had Battle of the Bamboo last week. So I guess how could you think of like the critiques that were presented in that video and then apply it to events like PCN or Battle of the Bamboo? Anyone can go. Oh, wait, Bryce, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see you had a question.
Oh, no, it's okay. I think it's actually pertaining to what you were bringing up, which is the critique of like with coming from the video, the whole entire idea, like identity being so rooted on one particular thing. My question was, is it bad if we're using platforms like PCN and Battle, not in particular like in a purposeful way, not like on purpose, but is it bad that we are we are introducing all of these modern elements into what we consider traditional dance? Is that, I'm trying to imagine, is that something that's wrong? Like, is it okay to do that? Or because I know some people who have that idea that we want to introduce all these particular things, but then on the other side of people are like, no, you got to keep this sort of like sacred, and you have to keep like stay to the books, because on that side, for at least me, it's so hard because yes, while I want to tell the people who want to inject like more modern things, like, hey, we have to keep it like towards the roots. I also want to tell the more traditional people, be like, yo, there was never a rule book that really said that, and tradition and culture has never been set in stone. There's no like ledger that you have to like, there's no checklist that you have to keep checking off of. So that's why I wanted to ask everybody here.
Hi. So I've had like a love-hate relationship with like modern traditional folk dance, the fusion, and when I was reading through the discussion questions before this discussion, I was thinking about it, and I feel like when I was cultural coordinator, I was a lot more uptight when it came to Filipino folk dance, and I was a lot more critical about it, and at that time I really didn't like the fusion. But I feel like as I kind of loosened up and wanted people to just, I kind of wanted to more so focus on people just enjoying themselves and not making it such a serious thing to be involved in Filipino folk dancing. Like, I kind of became more okay with the fusion, but I think I'd like it more if you don't only represent Filipino folk dancing as a modern fusion version. Like, I'd appreciate it more if maybe you started out doing like solely traditional dance, and then like at the end, like throw in like a modern twist to it, so that people who aren't familiar with the culture don't only see it as that like Filipino American like hip hop modern fusion version, and that's not their only idea of what it is, and they still have that traditional side to it.
I guess I have a follow-up question for you, Christine. So in regards to like having like modern fusion incorporated into like traditional dance, how would you view like the pieces that are staged for Battle of the Bamboo? Because like those, like part of like the judging criteria is like one, being able to stay true to tradition, like for the choreography, and then the second would be originality, or at least that's what was listed on the score sheet this year for Battle of the Bamboo. So they want both, obviously honoring the tradition of like the traditional dance that's being performed, and then also originality and choreography. So like, would that count as a modern fusion, even if it's like modern, not in the sense of like we're doing hip hop, but like modern as in the sense of like we're adding something new to this? So yeah, how would you see that? Like, because there's definitely different interpretations that are taken on whenever it's staged for like PCN or Battle of the Bamboo.
I'm trying to think of how to respond to this. I feel like it's really hard not to, they want you to be original, it's really hard not to draw from modern inspirations, because we are from this generation. We have very different influences than like our ancestors did. Like, I know when I was a freshman, my cultural cord was a cheerleader, and I know like, so some moves were like were drawn from that, and I know people that like come from different backgrounds like hip hop, and they drew some of their choreography from inspiration from that. So like it's really hard to avoid that. And if you, I don't know, that's hard to answer, but I'm gonna think about it.
Yeah, I know it's a loaded question, don't worry. But yeah, I guess it goes for everyone. I see Christian, you're like nodding your head.
Yeah, it's like one of the many like questions I think about almost on like a daily basis. Of like, how do we draw the line between like modern and like originality, or like authenticity? Like, how do we define authenticity in the first place as like Filipino Americans? But like, I've come to the conclusion that like what we produce as like Filipino Americans or like Philippine X will always be a copy. It can't be the original unless like you are from the certain tribe and like that's like their lived experience. But I think we should recognize that like what we have right now, like with battle and like PCNs, or like copies or like renditions, and it's a very limited educational tool to show others. And although it's very limited, I think it's still a very important tool nonetheless. But yeah, I don't really know, like, I just have like a lot of qualms with like fusing modern and like traditional, but I definitely recognize that like it's a very like, we should enjoy ourselves, and I think it should be definitely be used as like a supplement and never like a replacement for the real deal.
I have something else to input for this. So I'm like reflecting back on when I was doing choreography and how my partner and I approached this, because we like, one of our goals was really to stay authentic and like maintain as much possible the integrity of the dance and the storyline and costumes, music, everything. And I know one thing we did was think about where the inspirations of the dances we were choreographing to are coming from in the first place. Like, for example, tickling, you're imitating the tickling birds. So like, Or like my dance, we did Banailan Banog, and it was like chickens and hawks. And we literally looked up videos of baby chicks and chickens and hawks and like looked up videos of actual things that these dances were drawn from to try to come up with our own choreography. And that's how these dances were created in the first place. So in a way that's like, it's modern in that we're in this generation and coming up with our own interpretation of these same references, but it's still like somewhat authentic because it's the same source that they drew the dance from, if that makes sense.
Like it's still that you're not changing the process of creating. Yeah.
Yes, but it's modern because it's us in this time with our mindset that we have, and the influence, like everyone's interpretation of something is going to be different. So of course, us being this generation interpreting it is going to be modern in a way.
Kathleen, I was just curious. So, are these discussion questions, are they supposed to be followed in order, or are they just
They're just like to give inspiration.
promote? Because, like, something I always wonder about and think about. So, this is like kind of later on in the questions, but um, I've talked a lot with people from like the East and West Coast, and even the South, uh, who are leaders in their like equivalents of MAFA. And something interesting is that nowhere else in the country will you find a cultural dance competition like Battle of the Bamboo. And I suppose on the West Coast, from what I understand, it's like been called kind of like a cultural appropriation to represent these tribes and these dances and these people that many of us don't really have much of any connection to. And then not only to do that, but to use that to compete against other people. Um, it, I don't know exactly when they like stopped the competitions, but I know that or like from the people I've talked to, like for a while now, like they haven't competed with the dances because like I said, like not only to um, like represent these cultures, but I think competing with to see who's more like authentic or original, or like who has the better choreography and stuff. It is really problematic. So I don't know what do other people think about this.
From my perspective, I do agree that like it can be seen as like problematic, in which like we shouldn't be using an idea of competition to drive us. I think competition should only be used to be like a motivation to be clean and like precise, and like in order to like honor the tribes and like appreciate but not appropriate one's culture. But I definitely also like from like with this like appropriation or like the competitive side, because I feel like I can't really assume for like a lot of people, but like I get the general vibe that a lot of people like some people go to battle to like win, but like at the same time I see a lot more other people to honor and like represent the culture as well. So there's definitely like both sides of the coin with battle, I guess.
Hello. I have very strong opinions about this.
Go for it.
I honestly don't like the competition aspect of battle, and I mean, I agree with Christian in that it does produce like really great performances, and people really challenge themselves and push themselves like to the limit to get these perfect performances and have like really amazing costumes, music, formations, and all of this stuff, and put on a great production. So I really appreciate that aspect of the competition. But for me, Battle of the Bamboo is supposed to be a time to celebrate our culture and to like I wish I had a time to like watch the other schools and celebrate with them and like cheer them on. But we're in separate rooms the entire day. The only time we're ever together is like when we're waiting to see who wins. And um and I mean, it really comes down to the coordinators themselves and what values they're pushing on their dancers, like how they're running their practices and how they're talking about the competition, how they're talking about the dance. And I think that's where those attitudes can really come from. It comes down to like the leaders and the groups and just the way they're phrasing everything around the competition and what the dance means. Because I've seen like some people say like talk about it as a competition and talk about it as like placing, and then I know some leaders that really just focus on honoring the dance itself, honoring our people, honoring our ancestors, and being authentic and staying true to the story. And that, like, those two things produce completely different attitudes towards the event itself, I think. But yeah, I don't really like the competition aspect other than that it makes really nice performances.
Hi. I don't know, just like some of my thoughts on the ideas. Like, I think that a lot, like the competition of aspect of battle, like what it should be meant to as is like sort of some sense of like accountability. Like you will get shot down if like this is not what like if this is not accurate, you know. But there's also the where like, oh, we need to innovate, we need to make this like new and exciting, like so everyone in the crowd will gasp, but like that's not necessarily what Filipino cultural dance should be, you know. Like it's a celebration of like a lot of the dances are just celebrations of the daily lives of the actual tribes, and a lot of the time that's lost on us, especially if coordinators like fail to push that upon us, because that's not necessarily what is on the forefront of everyone's mind, because we put some senses that it's like if we don't win, then like we feel less validated, and that's just that stems from the competition aspect, that stems from the just like setting a hierarchy of, oh, you won first place, you are like superior, which is wrong in many ways. But like I do agree with the like, oh, it makes our dances better, which I don't know, is that like what we're aiming for, is like really a question that we have to be asking ourselves. So I think like just really the burden of that, and something that needs to like be like emphasized in future years, is just like how do we actually like impress upon our members that like what these dances are doing and what we are doing, or what we should be doing, is like emulating and like celebrating what these tribes have been doing for years and years, and like what their daily lives are. Like I think one of the things that I really liked that our chords this year said was just like, we are like, part of what we're trying to do is like just be the Manobo tribe, you know, like represent like who they are and like what their daily lives are like, just just like that. So like more of that, please.
Can I add something really quick? I remember my junior year when we were being critiqued like a couple days before battle. I think this was the year that we like really started emphasizing what you're talking about, and that's like when Barkada really started talking about that at like every practice ever since then. But I remember one of the upperclassmen was like yelling at the girls and was saying like, you are harvesting these seeds. You need to feed your family. Like you need to act like you are planting these seeds and you are praying for a good harvest and you need that rain. Otherwise your family's gonna starve and you're not gonna have a harvest. Like, what are you doing? Take this seriously. Like, just like really imagining like if you were that person and you really needed to plant these seeds. Like, okay, I'm sorry.
I just like to keep onto that track for like this year for battle. On the same theme of like trying to like emulate the native Filipino, just like to say that like Kathleen would always like try to like hype us up, and like we did in Alimango, which is like a barrio dance. So like when we were trying to like compete and perform, she'd always stress like you're supposed to be happy, you're supposed to like have like a party in like the town square of the Philippines. And I think that's like a really important aspect when you're trying to coordinate these, is to like not trying to, and also like in tangent with like competition, I feel like the main motivation should be also just trying to just like emulate, but at the same time like competing or like trying to win is just like should be like in the background. It should just be the bonus too to that.
Yeah, I guess so. Then I can also speak for myself since he talked about what I was say during battle practice for this year. Yeah, so in Alimango was it's a barrio dance that we really tried to have fun with. I think more so than other dances, simply because, like I said during practices, like barrio dances are like at the center of like the village. They're celebrating festivities, engaging with one another, and right before we went on stage at Battle of the Bamboo, it was one of our performing members' birthday that day, and we're like, okay, guys, we're just gonna go out there and we're literally just gonna be having a birthday party for Andy right now, and that's kind of how we kind of channeled that energy that's performed like for these barrio dances traditionally, but taking it and then instead of just trying to mimic, it was really us actually enjoying it genuinely. And there's only so much we can do to or at least in my opinion there's only so much you can do to like mimic, because these dances are at its very core, in my opinion, like interpretations of what these dances are back in the Philippines, or what they were traditionally. And then even then, like the division of the suites has political origins with that after what was it? It was sometime in the like 1920s or 30s. The like Filipino elites at like UP and Ateneo, they started doing research on all these different tribes to figure out what this repertoire could be for like for their own like traditional folk dances to separate themselves from U.S. colonialism. And there is an air of essentialism in that, and like how they've broken it down into 5 suites, but like again, at its core, we were just trying to be the village goers, be the village members of the barrio, and have fun with it. Yeah, now I'm just going in a rant about how we formed at battle. But yeah, I guess, what were other people's thoughts? I know, Bryce, you had something to say. I don't know if it's related to this at all, but you can go ahead if you wanted to.
Yeah, it was actually on the questions were rooted on thoughts that were came up earlier. So the first question I have is actually specifically about battle. What if would the controversy that we're talking about battle still be an issue if, and I feel really bad because I'm like, because Fia might be watching this and they may be like, oh, we're doing something wrong. what do we do? Guys, like, come on, we have to get this out. Are you all watching this? Like, that's how I imagine it to be. But would that controversy, would it still be an issue if Battle of the Bamboo was advertised, marketed, and designed to be about dances that are inspired and based on traditional Filipino dances? Not saying that that's like a sort of a failsafe, but in a sort of recognition, like we brought up before, saying that, admitting that and understanding that it's not the exact same thing, because number one, we're not in the Philippines. Number two, we may or may not be descendants of that particular tribe, that particular group. We don't have those day-to-day things. So would that change if we were to say, if Battle were to acknowledge that at least? And the second thing is, we talk about honoring our ancestors, honoring our traditions. Is doing things and replicating them to be the exact same thing, is that the only way that we can honor our ancestors? Or can we consider that honoring our ancestors is saying we are developing our own culture here in America or around the world by interpreting all these different stories for ourselves?
That kind of sounds like what the theme was for Battle this year, because it was cultural, like to teach like a new era, saying that's not starting off completely new, but building off the past, and then adding it into like our millennial generation. But I guess I see where you're coming from in terms of like having Battle of the Bamboo or UIC FIA promote that, because I mean, I definitely get that sense in like the advertising, but like during the actual day of the competition, I feel like that's not what's like, the theme isn't what people take away from the day of the competition. It's more so the performances and I guess the continuity within like what they want to do, like broadly as like the theme versus like what people actually remember from the day of performances. JP, I see you thinking. Yeah, go ahead, take your time. Anyone else want to go?
The only reason why I'm asking that is because I'm really somebody who stands on the outside. Like I said before, I was never a participant in Battle of the Bamboo, so I don't know what actually happens on stage. I don't know what it's like to coordinate a traditional dance. So, and that's actually extremely relevant for me too, because, or at least for members of Minnesota, because we can't say it's even more difficult when you have people on your team that are just don't affiliate or don't identify any type of Filipino at all. So how can you do such a thing, and how can you get them included in that sort of thing? Because that sort of mentality, like, oh, you have to be this type of person, that's very exclusive, and it kind of seems to go against our what MAFA and most MAFA affiliate missions are. Is we want people to understand us, but how can we do that if we're just pushing like, you will never be that type of person, you will never be this this or that? Not even saying never, but just saying like it will be so difficult to get there.
Okay. What am I saying? Still thinking about the question just asked, but like just in general, like one of the things I like to think is like we can do, like we really have the freedom to do whatever we want as long as we admit what we're doing. You know, like if we're going to call Battle a competition, it shouldn't be under the guise of like we are doing this solely for the purpose of celebrating our culture. And if we're going to do Battle under the guise, like if we're going to like choreograph and teach our members these dances, like to celebrate the Filipino culture, it should not be under, like, we shouldn't be operating under that guy's wall where like what we're really aiming to do is win a competition. So I think like one of the things that we really need to establish is like, what are we doing? Like, let's let's admit to ourselves like what our purpose really is, and that's going to be different for everyone. And I lost where I was going with this. Oh, give me a second. Sorry, just wanted to say that.
In the meantime, we have a new guest here on our call. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. So my name's JR Lassos. I'm an alumnus from UIC. So I was a member of Filipinos Alliance and also a member of MAFA before. So yeah, I just got home, thought I'd see if the call was still going on, and it is. So yeah, just wanted to see what's up.
Right now, what exactly are we talking about? Wait, Bryce, do you want to reiterate your question again?
Absolutely. So I had 2 questions, technically 3 now. The first question was, going to battle, is it an issue? Would it be less of an issue on the controversy of traditional dance if battle were to advertise themselves as a competition of dances that are rooted within or inspired by Philippine traditional dances? That's the first question. Is there an issue, or would there be less an issue? Number 2 is sticking to tradition, as far as we know, like this is what's been passed down. Is that the only way that we can honor our ancestors? That's a big thing too. And then I think number 3 was, is it, my question is like, kind of, do other people see the issue of having that sort of mentality of very traditional, very orthodox, like sticking to that sort of a mentality? Doesn't that cause an issue for, don't you think that would cause an issue for members who are not, who don't identify as any type of Filipino? And this is especially important because most of our organizations in MAFA, we're trying to be advocates of Filipino culture. We're not trying to be, at least I hope so, we're not trying to be elitists of Filipino American culture.
Okay. Oh. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna like finish my thought from before. So basically, so first question, I think like advertising it as less of a competitive thing might not even change anything unless you strictly make it non-competitional, because like if there's always going to be that aspect, then like that's always going to be in the back of their minds. That's always going to like drive us in a way. It's like even if we put our hearts out on there, if we're given second, we don't feel like it doesn't feel like, you know, it doesn't feel like we're first, even though we should feel like we are, you know, stuff like that. And then also just like I don't like the idea personally, but this is like maybe kind of naive because I'm not necessarily like really a cultural coordinator. But I don't like the idea of like having to maintain this sense of like strict traditionalism, because that's not something that is sustainable, and that's something that's like Filipino culture, if it were never changed, it like what we know as traditional Filipino dance was definitely not what was like what existed at the beginning. Like that's definitely not, like there's no way that it has never changed, that it has remained static. And I don't think I think it would be irresponsible for us to like just let it remain static and like not let it evolve and not let it like flourish in our own way. Like I think part of what we should be doing is not necessarily like we should, part of what we can do to like honor our ancestors, like honor those roots, is to like help the Filipino culture continue through us and evolve it in what way we see fit, because that's that's really the only way that it can still remain relevant and still remain like something that we will have in our lives. And that's something in of itself that is good, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, like we're doing this the way it's supposed to be because this is the way it's always been done. I don't like that idea at all. And then part of that idea is also like including these non-Filipinos in these dance, like helping, like let other people help us celebrate what are like, let other people help us celebrate our roots. And they don't have to be Filipino. They can be like, wait, they can be any, like just any person at all. And that's part of us evolving, like part of us being intersectional, and part of us like we're not all the same people, and we can have people who are non-Filipinos celebrate what being Filipino is, because they have that perspective if we let them be part of our community. Yeah.
For me, like cultural performance, it's not the only way to like honor like our roots. I think advocacy for like issues such as like controversies like Southern Philippines and like advocating for that, and like our responsible philanthropic endeavors as like cultural orgs are definitely other alternative ways to honor our roots, but also just like trying to like seek out and actively like read material, I guess, and just trying to like do that like as individuals and trying to just like read up on stuff is like a way of honoring. But I also think that battle is like an active educational tool for the performers themselves. I definitely think that when like you're going through the motions in like that, you're like teaching them in more like not a lecture way of like what the culture is. It's more like you're like in it as like as much as possible. And then when we're like trying to be like culturally authentic, I think it's sort of impossible to just like be 100% authentic. I think whenever you're like handling these like cultural like performances, you'll like, even if it's like unconsciously like you didn't mean to do it, you always like put your own twist to it. So I think in that we're revolutionizing, or not revolution, but like we're changing it nonetheless, whether we like it or not, whether you want to or don't want to. Like as soon as you like try to interpret it, like you're changing it.
Hi. Going off of what Christian said, of course it's not the only way to honor our roots, but I feel like it's the most, at least like with the resources we're given, like we can't all go to the Philippines. We don't all speak the same language. Not everyone grew up eating Filipino food, etc. Not everyone grew up being exposed to like strong traditional Filipino traditions in their household or in their community. So being able to like physically go through the motions and like while listening to music, while being told the story, like it's a very tangible way and like kind of spiritual way for me to like be involved in our culture, which I find like, I don't know, being on like the battle stage, you like have an outer body experience, I swear. And but I feel like, okay, one, I wonder if any other cultures or ethnicities like have the same issue, like are in Indians asking the same thing about the way they dance, are Chinese people asking the same thing about their traditional dance. I wonder if like, are we the only ones doing this because like the way we are as Filipino Americans being in this country, and like this issue with identity that we like so obviously have based on our history. Like, is that something that's unique to our community, or just like being in the Midwest? Like, I'm not sure, but that's something that I don't know. I don't know how we can find that out, but that's something I've been wondering. Are we the only ones thinking this and having this problem? And I also feel like, are we asking too much of this one event? It's already like a 6-hour long event. How much more can we ask of, UIC? How much more can we ask of every school and all their dancers? And I see battle more so like as a stepping stone for a lot of people, just to like start getting involved in a way that's tangible for them. And then once they have that first experience, and once they start to care more, and once they start to become more passionate about our culture, then there needs to be some other programming or some other opportunity for them to become more educated and be more involved. We don't have to ask all of this from this one event. Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up wondering if other like races and ethnicities have this sort of problem or experience the same things that we do, because I think they definitely do. I know there's like Middle Eastern, South Asian dance groups at UIC that compete at events like Battle of the Bamboo that are even nationwide. They like do funding to travel out of state, and they go to multiple ones throughout the year, and we see them practice like really late at night. So I believe that they really do a similar problem. I don't know if they might even view it as a problem, but a similar experience. But I think one of the things that's really different about Filipino cultural dance is, I guess, modernized cultural dance that I've seen. I mean, from my scope in the Midwest anyway, I'm pretty sure like in other places you might have seen people do sort of like modernized cultural dance choreography, maybe less not in a competition form, but just in like an exhibition, like, people would do like modern tinikling where they do some like hip hop moves or anything like that. But and that's a very apparent, especially because at UIC we even have this thing called a cultural showcase, where other cultures perform a cultural dance and compete against each other, which is, even when you zoom out and put in a different scope, is even like harder to like, wow, how do you even compete these against each other? They're so different, and the way that they interpret it and the way that they could add certain elements of choreography is just so Latin dance versus Filipino cultural dance versus Bhangra or anything like that. And then it's just like, I remember one of the issues that I had watching it was like, we don't even really do like modern sort of hip hop choreography and this kind of stuff, but all these other groups can do it. So how could you even gauge the competition between those things? But I think that's just like a bigger topic in itself. Just to go off of those three questions, I agree that's definitely not the only outlet that we can use to portray our culture. But it definitely is one of the most condensed ways that I've seen it done, because in the dance you have not just dancing, but you also have the music, you have the fashion, not so much the food. Well, I mean, I guess in the past we've had sponsorships from like Filipino American restaurants where they did catering, so I guess that was like an element of like, oh, this is the food of the Philippines as well. That was pretty sweet back in the day. But yeah, and then you go through all these different cultural dances that are from different suites that represent different regions of the Philippines, and different interpretations of the dance. So yes, like of course, like authenticity is going to be an issue, but that's just like sort of an inevitable element of culture versus tradition, and just authenticity in general. Like things get lost in translation. I remember one year in Battle, this was like a joke, but like one of the MCs that was a friend of mine was saying like, I wonder what the parents think when they see these dances. Like, do they even know what these dances are? Because as battle has evolved, like, admittingly, these dances have become more and more obscure, a lot more specific, a lot more just like, this is the tale of so and so. This is the you know, it's just very specific. It's no longer just like some of the basic dances we're used to seeing. So then a demographic I'd really like to be interested in hearing is just like some of the older generation that watches Battle of the Bamboo. Like, the joke was like, oh, that was a really good tinikling. And then the next act goes and be like, wow, no, that was the best form of tinikling I've ever seen. And so on and so forth. You know, it was just a joke, but then it's like, I could see where the joke was coming from. It's because like, you know, the obscurity of the dance, like, are these dances that even the older generation that's watching are familiar with, or is it even new to them? Or was it even seen in that way when they saw it, you know? So it's really hard to say, and I wish I could had a better scope. Like, I'm pretty sure maybe in the Philippines they have these kind of dances to that sort of wide of a spectacle. Maybe not even in a competition setting. But you know, I haven't been personally one to witness. What was this other blurb right here? With the community's involvement, how they contribute and advise, some groups are able to have parents and elders not just come in and just alumni come in and advise.
That was just to clarify. That was just to answer that question of, are we the only culture that actually has that sort of issue with mixing traditional and modern? I think that's what it was, Christine, if I'm wrong. But talking with a bunch of my friends here, I'm originally from the East Coast, and the demographic there, of course, is different. On the East Coast, there was a lot more Indian, Saudi Arabian, Middle Eastern, Southeast Asian sort of populations. And so I saw a lot of Bhangra that happened there. And if you look at that, Bhangra has a lot of traditional inspired moves. I was told, I'm not an expert, but I was told it has a lot of traditional inspired moves. But there's also that the music that they use is definitely not traditional. It's definitely has like the pop influence and things like that. But people treat it as a separate thing. And then when they bring out the traditional ceremonies and things like that, for some reason, people are saying this is actually done by the book. And they're very good at that. So when they talk about that traditional dance, they say, well, we know it's not, we know that they did something wrong here because they didn't do a particular move, or they didn't do a particular step in the dance, as opposed to the Bhangra, where it's a little more free flowing, it's a little bit more artistic. Not to say that it's less meaningful, because I think for them, what my friend Aman said, he basically said that it is honorary because we say we got this from our ancestors, but our ancestors have allowed us to put our own spin on it and put our own identity, and we show that we are making progress from what they've already established, what they've already brought us, and altogether, that's still culture. It's not a different culture; it's still culture because like someone mentioned before, culture doesn't stop progressing. It's not just okay, we draw the line here. It's a very dynamic sort of thing too.
Yeah, I actually did a workshop about like what the difference between culture and tradition is, and one of the I really wanted to hit with everyone was that culture is an evolving aspect. Like you said, it's always progressing. It's never going to, like you said, it's never going to be static. It's never going to be like where you draw the line. It's always evolving. And I guess to some people's interpretation, I guess devolving or just not being reflective of what they think it means. But yeah, culture is just like a reflection of a lot of elements, whereas tradition is something that's sort of passed on to the books. And another point that we're trying to get around was that are the traditions that we have in our culture always going to be prevalent, and is it always going to be better? Is it always going to progress our culture forward? I was talking about like things like, you know, to have all of your younger people in your family bless you when you're 80 years old? Is that going to be around in 100 years? You know, is what we heard for the reasoning that we bless people going to be the same explanation and reason years from now? Or is it going to get lost in translation? Or is it going to be, because for me, for example, like I kind of feel uncomfortable when younger people bless me just because I don't know. It's just kind of weird for me. Like I know it's a sign of respect, but then it also has a connotation of superiority. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us in Filipino families have felt this sort of friction where you felt forced to bless someone out of superiority and not necessarily out of respect for that individual in your family. That's probably a little too personal. We don't have to share those kind of things, but just that sort of, that's just an example of like how, you know, traditions are going to change to reflect the current state that our culture is in. So in a similar fashion, that's why Filipino cultural dance is going to continually evolve and continually look different. And if Bell the Bamboo is something that's going to be around for when we're old, it would be really interesting to see what dances are going to be like when we come, and then it's going to be like that. Who knows? And it's really also interesting because being on the side of people that plans battle, that's been involved with battle, we've got a lot of feedback from people of like different ideas that they've had about battle. I'm not sure what you guys might have discussed already. If there was anything that you wanted to know about battle internally, I would love to answer that too. But we've just heard just a lot of stuff. Sometimes really good, sometimes really interesting. Like we've had people talk about, you know, what if everyone just did the same suite or did the same dance, because it's easier to be able to gauge, like, I guess, which one is better, or judging wise. Or people were just like suggesting a lot of different things to change the concept of what Battle of the Bamboo is, which, as Christine, like, the question really is like, can we expect that from an event like this, or like, can we ask like UIC FIA to do all this? And something I actually wanted to bring up earlier is that Christine actually, one time when we were planning battle, after battle, she expressed how prominent the competition aspect of the show was and how it sort of took away from the community aspect of Filipino culture. And just like the vibe was a little just too hostile amongst each other's groups, when that was not really, not really the goal of the show. And those are some of the things that just like get lost in translation, is just like the why, you know, what's the why of the show, or like we do cultural dance, and it's reflective of, you know, just, I guess, who's preaching to the choir, I guess. But as advisor for Battle of the Bamboo this year, we wanted to have a segment of the show where we had all of the cultural dance groups together, and to do some sort of unifying activity to remind them why Battle of the Bamboo exists. And we kind of did that this year. It was for the first time ever, but we really took that advice to heart to at least try. We almost were not going to try it because we did not know how to engage like 300 people in one room when their mind is, you know, just focused on getting in the room, getting your stuff ready, practicing the dance and listening to your coordinator and doing whatever last minute things you have to do, like assembling costumes, doing makeup, et cetera, because that's like a lot of dancers' mindsets when they get in there. It's just like, it's business, just let's go, you know, get the group together, get everyone accounted for, do whatever last minute things you have to do, focus on the dance, focus on the day. But, you know, we were at least able to do an hour of just like whoever was willing and available to be in the room. It wasn't as I envisioned, but I think it was a good start. Like we kind of just had them we just riled them up, asked them questions that made them feel competitive against each other. And then we had an activity, it was one of the basic activities where they do like rock, paper, scissors, and then you cheer for the person that won. And then we had it till it was like 2 left. And then I told them, like, you know, in this room, in this moment, that's the only time you guys are all going to cheer for each other for once and not feel divided. Like you're all cheering for each other for one common goal. And that this show has the same purpose, is where like as a community, we're achieving one common goal of being able to portray and evolve our culture how we can and put it on a stage for everyone else to see, to educate them. And I know that another difficulty of the show is really just being able to explain the dances in a way that really sticks within the time that we have. And then while still making it entertaining. And that's the real challenge, because, you know, this is a big production show. It's money at the end of the day. And just logistic wise, you need to be able to put on a show that's entertaining enough for people to want to pay to do it. You know, even this year, you know, we have a lot of people that just don't want to pay and just find ways to sneak around it, sneak in, take someone's UIC ID, things like that. And, you know, that's just a problem on a logistic side to continue. Like, how can we make this show meaningful, but still entertaining enough for us to be able to sustain such a huge production so that it can continue to evolve? And when we did the logistics of how many people attended this year, I think it was almost 1,800, which was insane. Like, I think the last time it was about 1,200 last year. The year before that was about 1,000. So it's like, it's slowly growing really fast to the point of like, where is it even going to be held? You know,
Yeah.
It was held at Hilton Chicago because we could not get the forum. We did get some feedback that said that it might have just focused on aesthetic, that we did the Hilton Chicago on purpose, which was not the case. We just couldn't get the forum when we wanted it. Were ridiculously expensive. So that was like the most reasonable venue that we were able to find in such a short amount of time. Like, we almost did not have that. Right now, it almost did not happen completely, because no one was willing to take, you know, this being this large and with all these props, and all this, you know, stuff going on. It's kind of like a weird show for a venue to hear about, to host. So I have to get it. But
No, that's insane. I didn't realize battle.
I don't know if you guys had any other like.
Can you hear me?
Questions?
Can you hear me? Is my audio working?
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Sorry.
Man, just like opened up so many cans of worms, JR, and like at one spiel. I don't even know where to start. I guess I'm gonna try to rapid fire talk about everything that like was running through my mind as you were talking. I think the thing about Battle of the Bamboo specifically is that it's just such a unique competition, because Kenny and I also took this class, but there's a class over here at UMich that's on cultural performance in Asian American in higher education. So it specifically looks at collegiate networks of how these Asian American cultural performances are done. And my research project was on Battle of the Bamboo, and then there are other people in the class that are from like the South Asian communities, and they did like their like ISA shows or their competition circuits. And it's definitely different, like the way that these competition circuits are run. The best way I can compare it to is kind of like how like World of Dances function. So like it's like the genre of like hip hop or like urban dancing in general is like the theme of the competition, but like something like authenticity or tradition isn't really a part of the criteria. So the fact that that is taken into account at Battle of the Bamboo is something that's definitely unique. And then in terms of, oh gosh, JR left already. But he also mentioned like how the dances seem to be getting more obscure year after year, and was curious about like what the older generation thinks about like the different dances that are being put on at Battle of the Bamboo. And I think what did my mom say? My mom, after this year's Battle of the Bamboo, because this was her second year going, and she was just like, it's all aswang. Like, like I think it just happened to be this year that so many of the dances had like evil spirits or some type of like bad versus good present in them, and to her, like all of the like the legends from like different tribal sweet dances that are performed is something that's new to her, and what was familiar to her was like the Santo Nino that Niles North did, or like we did, or Fasa did like a barrio dance. So like the music is familiar, like the feeling, the smiles, the happy energy is familiar. So yeah, I definitely am interested to see like how this evolution to what seems like moving towards like the tribal legends has to do with like Battle of the Bamboos evolution, because it seems like at least with like the guidelines now, that's what really is catering. Like the guidelines for Battle of the Bamboo seems to really support that suite really well in terms of like, you know, the length of like how long the acts are supposed to be, and the storytelling aspect, and being able to move audiences and be engaging with all these different like roles being played and live music and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to take up too much time. I know JP and Christine and I think Bryce, everyone has something else to say. So Bryce, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I know. I'm really okay. I'm actually really just listening now.
Okay. JP, did you want to go? Christine?
You're on mute, but you said you had a suggestion earlier.
Hi. I've been thinking about this throughout like the entire discussion, and like for me, I love having these types of discussions, and I think the fact that you like Mafa's even doing this is really awesome. But there also needs to be some kind of action that comes from these types of things, some kind of change, and we can't just, you know, keep circling around these ideas and keep talking about like these issues and critiquing is like something. If we want to change something, you actually have to take action. And I think just, you know, Fia making that one small change in the day of Battle of the Bamboo is like one of those steps. And even though it was really hard and really challenging, and like, yeah, it was like a first step. And if we want to change the way people think about Battle of the Bamboo, and if we want to change the culture around it, it's going to take time. We can't just expect everyone to like all of a sudden like, oh, like next year it's going to be completely different. No, of course not. Because like even me as like someone who's like says they don't care about the competition aspect, when I watch other people's dances, I can still feel that coming out of me, and I can still hear it in the way I talk about these dances and critique them or talk about the schools. And as much as I try not to, like it's kind of been injected in me since I was a freshman. Like I had seniors who were very competitive against like Capo Loyola, for example, for personal reasons. And like, as much as I've tried to like get rid of that, it's still there. So like the idea I had was kind of, like if we want to instill these like certain values across all the schools who are involved in Battle of the Bamboo or are involved in cultural dancing throughout the Midwest, then there should be some sort of committee, I guess, of people who just like, you know, meet and talk about it and talk about like what values they do want to instill within their groups, agree on it, that they're going to take steps to instill those values, and talk about ways that they can do that. Because there are a lot of schools that, you know, it might be their first time participating in Battle of the Bamboo and in cultural dancing, and they don't know what to do. They don't have anyone to talk to. They don't have advisors, whereas like involved in it from the beginning. So we have advisors going back to like 2003. But I mean, that again, that's like asking more from our organizations and from our students. But like if we really make a change, like something has to be done internally. We need to change it systematically and not just like try to change it top down. You know, like putting this idea out, like these, like like what you were talking about, Kathleen, about like the theme, like, yeah, we can like put this theme over Battle of the Bamboo, but like how is that actually being instilled in that groups themselves and in the dances themselves? Like, in all honesty, it's not, because like we're not a part of the Battle of the Bamboo planning. We're not a part of coming up with that theme. So we have no real investment in that. And there's no real reason for, like, don't have a way to, they weren't involved in that planning process, so they don't have an investment in that. And so there's no way for them to communicate that and transcend that to our members. Yeah, so there's like ideas were like having like some sort of cultural committee across like the Midwest schools, or like creating a position on the MAFA board who would like somewhat coordinate that and be like the spearhead of that. I know like MAFA board used to not have the outreach position, but they wanted a way to unite the schools more, and they wanted someone to be that point person, and so they created that position. And so we can make changes, we just have to actually do it. And it takes time, but yes.
In response to what you said about like having differences in resources, that was actually the research project that I did with someone else in the class, that we were just like looking at just like how the distribution of Filipinos based on like the US map and then like specifically the Midwest seems to have some sort of correlation with like how well people are able to prepare, not necessarily place, but like how well people are able to prepare for Battle of the Bamboo. And having like a place like UIUC that has like such a long history of an existing Filipino org to begin with, in addition to how many years it's been established at Battle of the Bamboo, versus a place like St. Louis that doesn't have like a super prominent Filipino community in that area, struggling to have like the same type of resources, but have like accuracy in costumes, or being able to access like instruments, because that definitely divides the people who can like do live music and things like that. So I guess if other people have ideas about like how either MAFA or how UIUC or UIC, or how collectively as a community we can like move forward to not necessarily like even the playing field, but like keep evolving like how we like structure this event, because I think in the most part this is an event that regardless of like the critiques, it's pivotal in so many different aspects, and is monumental as an event for MAFA as a community. I mean, for me personally, it's like one of my favorite, it's probably my favorite MAFA event of the year that I enjoy participating in, despite like whatever concerns may arise. I mean, you could find that anywhere. Yeah, who else had something else to say?
Oh, I actually have to go, but some final thoughts is we have this space to talk like always. I think one of the first steps is to bring it to the attention to the communities we live in or we experience on a daily basis. I don't really know like what the specific systemic changes or like solutions are, but I think definitely talking about it is like the first step. I wrote like a MAFA blog post about culture performance that will be relatively out soon, but just want to say goodbye. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Christian. All right, did anyone else have any final remarks before we go around sharing? Or final questions, final remarks. There we go.
Well, yeah, I also have to go. But just like final thoughts, like this whole thing has like been, or like usually like these discussions are like a lot about what's going wrong. It's not like, you know, like people are like, hey guys, let's like talk about all the things that are going great, because there are a lot of things that are going great and we have to recognize that too. But like also in like recognizing all these things that could be changed, like the key to making change is these steps that we're talking about, like just taking small steps and sort of accepting the fact that like in term as like president or VP or whatever you are, like you can't make such like you can dream to have such like monumental change, but it's not going to happen. Like it's just there's only so much time in the day, and like there's only so many things you can do before you like lose your sanity to be changing your organizations and moving your organizations forward. That like really the key is just to like identify what's really important to you, and like maybe just even the smallest of steps that you can take to get the ball rolling. And also something that's really important, like I've recently realized that like I think is really important is just like keeping that process going. Like if we're to make change, we're like, just personally, I can't make all the change that I want to make. Like I need to ask for help. And also part of what I need to do is I need to empower those who come after me to make that change, and like sort of just like impress upon them what I think needs to make change. You know, like you just, part of making this change is like you doing what you can and then leaving it up to the next people, and just like slowly getting this like thing to change. Because like we can say, hey guys, like we want everything about battle to change, but like, you can't just like, hey guys, we're gonna have a completely new event next year, and like we can't realize what needs to be changed until it actually happens. And there are like so many things that we can say, but like we have to do them slowly. Bye.
Fair. Okay, to everyone else, thanks for sticking around. By the way, Kenny, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just like for a closing remark, I guess for me, I think something that's really important is that we're having this conversation. Like I feel like that's always like something to say, but like it's really important that all these people are talking about, and we've got more people thinking about, you know, not just Battle of the Bamboo, but like cultural dance, and putting it into more perspective than just um like what it's been in the past, like really to start thinking about why we do this, like what are we representing, like whose culture are we representing when we do this, and also just thinking about like moving forward with these events like PCNs or Battle of the Bamboo, like what are ways to improve, what are ways to and like what are ways to make it a more community, like I know, I definitely agree with some of the things other people have said about it can be like more divisive than it is like a bring together the community kind of event. But I think the fact that we've got all these people thinking about this, and it's gonna be, you know, I think moving forward we're gonna see like this is not like a huge change at first, but definitely small changes and in each organization and as a community as a whole as MAFA. So yeah.
JR, Christine?
Yeah, I'm just glad I was able to take part in this discussion and share sort of the internal works of how battle works with y'all. And I'm really glad that something like this is actually happening. This is, what was this, the second or third
Third
discussion? Third one, yeah. So it's just really cool that this is a thing, just coming from someone that's on past MAFA boards. So an outlet for people to just have these topics is just, again, like a small step to progress to move our culture forward. So luckily, we actually have another Battle of the Bamboo post meeting this week, and I definitely like to share what you you guys express to that board, because we're focusing on how we could transition the future VPEs. And I think the idea of, having more transparency, of having this committee, like possible committee, cultural committee across the Midwest, might be something that could be plausible for next year. And it could feel more of, like, not to take away from like that it's UIC FIA's show, but like more like MAFA involvement that makes it feel like our show, so that might be an interesting concept for us to talk about. But I guess closing remarks for me, just to share some, not frustrations, but just transparency for Battle Board, is just for everyone in the Midwest and all the cultural dance troops, all the organizations, just realize that Battle is such a huge production that it's really hard to please everybody. And a lot of people sort of focus this egocentric view of like their experience with their group, with their their time at Battle. And sometimes we get some feedback that comes more out of emotion than giving really specific feedback that can help us. So hopefully with this committee there's more transparency of like how the mindset is of how we plan battles, so that we can sort of share these aspects, so like people understand why things are a certain way, whether it's like, this is why the venue is here, this is why we chose the theme, like a little bit early on, especially with the participating groups, rather than just being an exchange of like, here's the information, here's your contracts that you need to get in by this date, this is the information you need to give to us, but having more of like that sort of barrier broken, so that all of the workings of Battle make sense for everyone that takes part in it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's something that could really happen a lot sooner than we hope. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I know this is like a huge long discussion, and it was hard to cut it off because I feel like we could go on forever just about Battle, just about PCN, just about cultural dance, just about like all these different things. But I think at the end of the day, like, yeah, it is something that I hope UIC recognizes, that the community is really appreciative that they do this event. Being on MAFA board, just like having like more like bird's eye view of like how things are going on in the MAFA community definitely it forced me to think beyond just like the constraints of like my own organization here at UMich. But it's something that's unique and something that like I look forward to and other people look forward to. And like, despite all the emotions that get attached that happens like with competition and whatnot, it is still something that I think is really, that brings something really important to the community. And I feel like so many people wouldn't have the same knowledge about like cultural dance if it weren't for something like this. So to UIC or FIA, whoever is watching this, like, we're not hating on you. We appreciate you. All right, Christine, did you have anything else?
Thanks for having me. Sorry I talked a lot.
No, thanks for, especially you two, the alum. It was really great having you guys want to join this and share your expertise and experiences.
But I think I like what JR said about like wanting to break people out. Not, you didn't say this, but like you mentioned the term like egocentric, and like people approach this event with like an egocentric perspective. And I never like thought about that word in terms of this event, but I feel like that's very true. And I feel like trying to break us out of that is just like a really good way to instill that perspective in people for like other experiences in their lives, not just for Battle of the Bamboo, like trying to see things from other people's perspectives in a way that doesn't not just in the context of like this one competition, but that's something like we should be doing as human beings. So I like that you mentioned that. All right.
All else has been shared for now. I think we can end it here. Thank you guys so much for sticking around, especially for you, Christine and Kenny, for almost 2 hours. But definitely, I'm thankful personally for having this type of discussion because I don't get to talk about like something like battle with people from other schools. It's always something I talk about like here with people at my school. So yeah,
Shout
thanks
out
again.
to Fia. I love Fia.
Yeah, great job, Fia. You guys always put on a great event.
I will let them know so they can stop stressing.
I feel like that's something that's just never gonna stop.
Yeah, that's for sure.
All right.
All right. Other than that, you guys are free to go. Thank you so much for contributing to the discussion. Have a good night. It's already night.
True.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for having us. Take care.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Peace, peace, peace.